Hey there, listeners. Cale here from the Timesphere team. Just wanted to thank you for clicking on whatever platform you're on and giving episode 1 of the Timesphere podcast a listen. Scott and I are very thankful. Obviously, it's a very small team making this content that we're starting to work on, so we appreciate any time you give us, especially if you're going to be along for the ride as this becomes a weekly podcast. So, Timesphere as a brand, along with Booster Blogs, my personal blog that I've been publishing on for the last 3-4-ish months, and I'm going to start publishing on more consistently, following layoffs and whatnot. The whole point is to boost stories of creative endeavors. So whether that be games, content online through streaming or content creation, manga, just entertainment stuff in general. We want to boost the stories that we feel need boost, whether that be through talking about the news and giving insights as journalists or through other sources that we've seen and read that we feel like need to be talked about a little bit more, or through interviews with people involved in the actual creative processes and stuff. I'm hoping that this podcast can turn into a place where you can come and get insight into creative endeavors, not just a news show, but something that you can tune into you get a little bit of news here or there, like today's episode, but also you can tune in to listen to us talking to some experts, or listening to us talking to some of the creators that are behind some very interesting things that are happening on the internet or in any kind of creative medium. So again, just wanted to thank you for listening. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about a lot of Sony stuff. Obviously, PlayStation 5 Pro, how the market of the current console market's kind of setting up for the Switch 2. The Switch 2 leaks that have been going on. I've covered this for a very long time, so I have a lot to talk about when it comes to the Switch 2 and kind of that area of the market and how that's setting itself up. I'm also going to be tentatively talking about some like the Palworld discussion when it's Palworld being sued by Nintendo and the Pokemon Company. Obviously don't know a lot about that. Even at the time between me recording this and when we recorded this episode, we still don't know a lot about the patent infringement and how this is going to be handled. So a lot of that is still going to be up in the air, but we do talk about that a lot here. And then we talk about the state of big publishers and how Sony versus like a Square Enix and how these pivots are happening internally with upcoming changes to the console market and upcoming changes to like platform exclusivity, how these things are affecting these big publishers that continue to post losses and or just flops on games. So if any of that sounds interesting, stay tuned for the news section. And then at the end, you get a little treat. Scott and I start up our own esports organizations and draft our favorite or the games we think are worth building a team in if you were starting an esports organization. We just talk about esports. We love esports. So anyways, I'm going to let you guys listen to the episode. I'm going to throw it to the boy, Matt Houston. Oh, and there's a thumbs up on the screen now. So if that post shows up on the video, there you go. But audio listeners enjoy, video listeners enjoy. Thank you for giving Timesphere a chance, and we hope to see you again in the next episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Timesphere Podcast. This is only our second one. It's technically the first because the first one was the pilot episode. But welcome.
First
back.
Official episode.
Yeah, first official episode that we're actually prepared for. We came with all of the bells and whistles that we totally didn't throw together an hour before we decided to record this. So we've got a lot to talk about. We got a lot of gaming news. I call it news. This is just a news rundown of just like all this mostly garbage that's going on in the space. I just want to talk about it because
we're really selling this first segment. We're starting with the mostly garbage news.
Look, the industry up until a certain point, like I mean, we're in the release window. So unless we're previewing games, like I mean, if you want to preview a game, I already previewed. I got to play Sparking Zero early, so if you're a Dragon Ball fan, you can go watch that. It is a long preview talking about the bells and whistles and all the changes there. So there's your preview. You'll get more previews and reviews and stuff as they come. But when we're not doing that, we're kind of in the season of just like slop for the news section because everything's already announced through basically the end of the year, except for. Obviously, we're going to talk PS5 Pro and Nintendo Switch 2, quote unquote leaks. But overall, like outside of the PS4 the PS5 Pro, which we know about now, and we have a release date for, and the eventual Switch 2 presentation that we're going to get at some point this year, presumably.
This year.
Everything else is basically done. We have release dates, we have launch windows, we have everything else that you could possibly want. So it's just waiting until that stuff comes up and embargoes lift and all these other things. So
what's our last showcase this year? Is that going to be Game Awards? And that's in November, right?
No, Game Awards is December. It's the first week. It's usually the first weekend. Like it's like the first week of first. It depends on the year because sometimes it's the second, and then sometimes it's the seventh. So it's usually that like first.
It's that first week of December, and we get a look at what's coming up. The new announcements.
That's usually when we start getting our first like surprise reveals and stuff for like the next year that we haven't already heard about, or we get our first look for longer looks at stuff, or we might get like a Monster Hunter release date if we don't get that at like there's a rumored PlayStation showcase happening right after TGS, I believe, next week, because Tokyo Game Show is about to happen. So yeah, we should get some stuff there. There's apparently like a rumored remaster of Horizon Zero Dawn that's coming, which is like that is the last remaster I'm giving Sony. Like that is the last franchise that they have that is like, wow, this sold a lot of copies and probably is worth a remaster if they just want to get it in more hands, especially with the Lego game coming out. Like I'll give them that one. But apparently there's rumors of another one that's going to be disappointing according to some insiders, and some people were saying it's going to be Days Gone.
I was just going to say it's Days Gone,
and I'm like, man, that the dude who made that game that left the studio and never
what
got
an
a
asshole.
Sequel, yeah, that dude was already unhappy at Deacon being an Astrobot. I can't wait to hear what his reaction is to getting a remaster when he's not even there.
I mean, so did they completely like? Does he make nothing? I don't think anyone made anything from like having appearances in Astrobot, but I'm sure no one other than him complained. But like, I would assume
everybody else is super happy about it.
Yeah, I would assume he makes some residuals from if they do a remaster.
Oh, I'm sure he might get something or whatever, especially if it was like a studio co-founder or whatever.
Yeah, like, yeah. So like, stop complaining, dude. Like, especially like imagine being like the one stick in the mud complaining that your character.
Oh yeah, everybody else is super happy. Like the Astrobot team is just like, oh yeah, we were so happy to work with like Arc System Works to do this like really cool animation for the Soul bad guy one and we were just happy to include Guilty Gear, like all these like super throwback ones. Like I'm playing Astrobot right now in pieces and it's so fun.
Steph decided to play that one because she's trying to give herself a big runway into Dragon Age, like not taking up any games that like will take up too much time. But so this was like a perfect one, and she loved it, and she called upon me to come upstairs and do some of the challenge levels for her. She's like, you have to do this one, and I did. But it really, even just the couple levels I played and seeing like it really is a slam dunk. I would say it's a high point. You've seen this on Twitter. This up and down graph of PlayStation, we're so back. Oh, it's over. It's over. Yeah. Well, which brings us to our first topic, which is the slew of hardware announcements or leaks or this whole talk.
I don't know where you were at when the PS5 Pro, because when we worked at Dot, this would be a very much I mean, it was really early in the morning, and it's not like the biggest deal, so it wouldn't have been like an all hands thing, but it was a live.
It would be at 3. It would be at 3 p.m. At here. Why did no one cover this?
Yeah. So I was recovered. Well, I think this was the day the day I was going. So I was out in San Diego, and I don't remember if this was the second day. So either I was not waking up that early because I was out really late that night, or this was the first morning and I just didn't care. It was the first day. It was when we were going to play Sparking Zero, because everybody was talking about the PS5 Pro and a bunch of people were confused about the price point and stuff. And like the media section of the PR people were asking the journalists that were there about like what this means. What do you think this means for like games and stuff? We were just having conversations about it because it was a bunch of nerds together in like one space. So, bro, I'm just gonna pull this up, the spec sheet. So this is like a really good rundown I found on on Reddit of what these specs are, because the reason I want to talk about it, Yeah, this is for the Pro specifically. So we're
Okay.
talking about the PS5 Pro and its specs real quick. We're just going to do a quick rundown because you probably heard about it to death by this point. But it's going to cost $700, which I am not for this, especially since it seems unnecessary in terms of what they're doing with the price, but it's also just a luxury good. Like your PS5 is not going anywhere, and that price might go up a little bit because it's already gone up in some markets by like $50. But like that's not going anywhere. This is not going to become the main console. This entire thing is like just a luxury good for people who want this upgraded experience. So
this isn't for people who have been like you don't think this is for people who've been waiting for a Pro PS5 and haven't had one up until this point? You think this is for people who already have a PS5?
I think it's for both, but I think that this is a much harder sell on someone getting like all the people that were getting into the PlayStation generation for like EA College Sports or EA College Football and stuff like we talked about we've talked about on a couple different things before. This is going to be a much harder sell for someone to get this than it would be a PS4 Pro was. Because I don't remember what the price point of the PS4 Pro was, but it was much closer to the base PS4 than this is. This is like a landslide. This is $200.
This is $300 more? Okay.
$200 more expensive. Okay. $200 more expensive if you don't want the disc drive. If you want the disc drive, it's going to be closer
or the stand. Or the vertical stand.
Basically, if you want the full package, you're going to have to pay $800.
Yeah. This feels like this price that they set, this is the price that they felt they could get away with. And so that's why they said it. They're confident they can sell at this price point. So that's why they said it.
We'll get into why I don't like this or what I think this is doing here in a bit. But basically, my opinion on the price point and this is for the people who want to play games the best quality possible, but don't want to deal with a PC. Because this is going to run things better than a PS5, better than any console you can get, better than any like hardware you can get that is streamlined, which is what consoles are for.
And I would say better than any PC south of $1,500.
This is better than anything you can get at the price point on a PC. That $700 is not going to get you a PC that can run anything close to what the PS5 Pro can. So the whole point of this is if you don't want to deal with a PC, or you're just like you want to play the best games possible on like in the PlayStation ecosystem, this is what this is for. It's not for everybody. You don't have to complain about it nonstop. Like if you're asking what it's for, it's not for you. That's just what it is. But here's like the basics of it. It does have a 2 terabyte SSD. I don't know if that was actually in the presentation or not. I still haven't watched that video. I just read the recaps and stuff. But if that wasn't mentioned, that's a big flub because 2 terabyte SSD built in, big win. It does have it will come with a controller. Obviously Astrobot's Play Room pre-installed. So nothing changes
and a stripe.
Yeah, and the stripe.
A cool stripe on the side.
But yeah, it's got an upgraded GPU, 67% more compute units than the current PS5, and 28% faster memory. Basically, 45% faster rendering for gameplay. Once you get into percentages, you've already lost like 90% of people. Advanced ray tracing.
This is a console that like does not need. I think you said it better. Right? You kind of alluded to this. Like you do not need to be convinced. You will not be convinced to buy this console. You already saw it and got your wallet out already, or you saw it and went nope.
That is actually not true because we're going to talk about that here in a second. So like advanced ray tracing, AI. Basically, this is going to let you run games that you had to choose between like performance and graphical fidelity in the modes that you can pick. What you're running the game in, you can run them in performance. You can basically run them in performance and get better graphics, or you can run them in graphics and get better performance.
Okay.
Nothing is promised. Not every game is going to run at 60 frames guaranteed or over 60 frames guaranteed or whatever. Not guaranteed to run at 4K. There's some games that are that like I think
the most pointless standard for like gamers to get upset about is 60 frames per second in my opinion. Just like
it all depends on what you're doing, but like if it's not an FPS or something, then who cares?
Exactly. Yeah, and I'm not playing. I mean, Valorant is on console, but I'm not playing.
Some people are more sensitive to it than others. I'll give them that, but like that's not selling me a $200 console upgrade.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
When I finally get around to playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I'm going to play it on PS5, and I'm sure it's going to look much better on the PS5 Pro with everything that was shown off and everything, but I'm gonna enjoy it just fine. So, good. The whole point of bringing this up is just to kind of rehash those points and to talk about the complete turnaround that happened earlier today when Sony announced the 30th anniversary edition of this damn console.
Mm-hmm.
So
this edition's a Pro one. Is this a Pro?
This is a Pro. It is not a PS5,
Okay.
which is hilarious because the whole point of the PS5 is that these damn clamshell design or whatever, like the shell, you can take off and replace with stuff they sell on the PlayStation Store. Like you can go buy different designs for this for these shells, and they're not going to sell this one, which is nuts. And now, given these are limited units, there's like some like 12,300 globally. And some of the accessories like the controller will be sold separately. I want the controller. I do want. It's sick.
Controller is nice.
I need another one anyways because the one that I use, the black one that I use, the X button finally gave out. So gotta get a new one anyways. But there is a 30th anniversary PS5 Pro.
Fighting games will do that to controllers.
They do. It's bad. I've gone through a lot of controllers. But yeah, so this is. It's basically just.
When was the last time you broke a controller? I'm just curious. Or have you ever?
I've never broken one fully, but I have worn out buttons on several.
I think I haven't fully broken one, but I have this part here. It was like a really piece of shit cheap 360 controller. Like that was like a USB plug-in one that I cracked the handle of it. I want to say that was from a 2K game, but that
probably
it was some sports game because those are no other game frustrates me like sports games. Like Valorant, CS, like the worst ranked teammates still won't do what sports games do to me. I've been pretty good with college. We're going very off topic. I just want to say I see a lot of people on TikTok and YouTube streaming, playing college football and getting upset. And before I started really getting into it, I was like, what are they getting upset about? But there are moments in that game where they're where I'm I get it. I have it up in the air. It's I'm gonna deliver the final blow to and yeah.
I do want to say there is a PlayStation 5 base version of this too. I just saw it. So there is basically what this is, it's a line of PlayStation products for the PlayStation 5, PlayStation 5 Pro that are all designed like the original PlayStation. Colorway, the colors of the buttons, the way the controller looks, all these different little tidbits, even the USB port or the USB cord for the controller you can get is themed like the plug for the original PlayStation, the back end USB-C will plug in and it'll make it look like the bulky part is still sticking out like an old controller would. It's really cool. It's awesome. They did this. They did a version of this with the PS5 or the PS4 Pro. I want to say for the 25th anniversary. Maybe not quite whatever that anniversary was. They did a PlayStation 4 limited edition anniversary thing. That was also limited number with a special design and everything.
It's so fascinating that that gray is such just gray. It's just an iconic PlayStation color.
It's the gray with the it's this specific color of gray with the dark gray accents and then the colored buttons.
Yeah, I was gonna say the colored buttons too.
And it's because
and the colored PlayStation logo. Very nice.
Yeah, the nice little pop of color you get. But yeah, this completely flipped people. I've seen people that were bashing it, basically saying, "Here's my wallet." They're gonna try and buy this,
bashing the Pro, but then seeing this and going hell
exactly. Yeah. And now that I know there's a PlayStation 5 just regular version of it, I wish they would just sell. I mean, you're not gonna get the gray internals because the actual console itself is gray too.
So it's not just Pros for this 30th anniversary.
It is both.
It
is both, but it is a completely unique console. It's not the shells.
Smart.
So it is.
Okay.
So they're gonna sell a lot more than I was initially thinking, but.
Yeah,
they've also got a version of the Portal that is that controller themed. They've got it looks like an Edge controller, so they're fancy.
My pets picked the perfect time to start roughhousing. It's been all day. they've been fine. And then they're like, wait till he hits the record button. All right,
It
now. But I think they're separated now.
All the
so if I have to get up,
yeah.
I have to get up. It means I'm breaking up a fight.
Sure, do it.
Not a fight. A playful, a little roughhousing. They get along well.
I'm just looking at like this. So every console is going to have a special logo, and then it's going to be numbered. So, going to be like if you want one, you're gonna be fighting people for it, and especially scalpers and robots and stuff.
Oh god, that's gonna. Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that's because that's everything nowadays. That's tickets. That's limited edition anything, especially like video game stuff. Oh yeah, that's.
Yep. So have fun.
I hope. Yeah, I would like. I mean, Sony can do themselves a huge favor by like implementing some system that like deters scalpers and bots, but I just don't think they will. I mean,
they have like a queue. They implemented like a queue system and stuff, so they're doing something, but it's still not like great. I will
it should be. You should be able to submit your PlayStation trophy score, and that determines your queue. I'm honestly, my girlfriend might do pretty well. Maybe we'll borrow hers and get a good spot in line.
Yeah, all I'm seeing here is that like the everything but like the consoles are the only thing that are going to be limited edition. Everything else is going to be like just for sale normally. So it's going to be limited run still, but you're going to be able to get a controller easier than you can a console, I would assume. So
oh yeah,
just be ready for the PS Direct queues to go up. But the reason another reason I want to talk about this is because last week we got all the quote unquote leaks of like the Switch 2 and discussions on like, and we're going to get into a lot of like rough year for big studios talk. For like how big games are faring and like the cost of games and stuff, but the demand, like the time it takes to make a game, one of the major complaints about the PS5 Pro is that a lot of people don't think a lot of games outside of like a few Sony games are taking full advantage of what the current console generation can offer. Like they think that there's still a lot that you can get out of the current console generation without adding like getting more technical and better, that's just not being taken advantage of, while also games take X amount of time to like they take 5+ years to make a big AAA game. Sony's been struggling to keep up with like it's like they don't really have a solid release schedule of AAA titles that are basically enticing people to come to the PlayStation 5 like they did the PS4. Like it doesn't feel like the year to year like release schedule has been as strong as what they offered with the PS4, which is why you see I'm not an analyst and I haven't looked at all the numbers. I know that the growth rate of PS5 ownership is I think I recently heard it's ahead of PS4. I don't think that's going to hold with this cost, but I think that
I think that could be due to, could you say it's possibly due to the PS5 not being that dramatic of a step up in terms of like console power? I feel like there's a lot of people.
Cross-gen stuff does have a little bit to do with it because
still
there was
using
not as much
PS4s.
Cross-gen. There was basically no cross-gen from PS3 to PS4
3 to 4,
that launch window.
That's what I'm thinking.
That was mostly because of the architecture, though. Xavier and I talked about that on the last live show, where it's like, okay, cool, they're using AMD again for the next rumored agreed to a deal with AMD to do the chipset for the PS6. Because they're focusing on having backwards compatibility, because PS3 backwards compatibility is basically just a bitch across the board because of that cell the cell processor infrastructure. That is why like all the PS3 games on like the digital PlayStation Plus library are stream only and you can't download them because they're easier to like emulate on a cloud than they are on actual hardware. Like it's just
one of my favorite games from last year, just like 2 days ago, Star Wars Jedi Survivor just came out for Xbox One and PS4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because
this came out at like the beginning of 2023.
Oh yeah, it came out early last year. Like
yeah, it came out in a stacked year. Like it just because and I think like its performance issues, its little bugs at the front, like I thought it was a great game, and I'm very biased towards Star Wars games. I'll talk, I said last time I was just starting on Outlaws. I'm still enjoying it. This game if not for those bugs, probably could have contended for maybe some Game of the Year awards. But against that's
Yeah,
but I think
just a stacked lineup.
yeah, but it goes back to your point that it's like even with I would say most like last gen launches like this are not this delayed. Like this is what, a year and a half. I don't think that's normal. I think it's usually sooner, right?
It's all usually simultaneous, and they usually have it planned ahead of time, which is why I think Spider-Man 2 was the first Sony first party game that wasn't available on both, because Ragnarok was available on both. And so was the Horizon Forbidden West was, but the DLC was not. The DLC was exclusive. So
yeah,
like you slowly start to see the moving away from the previous generation and across like generations of like PlayStation, Xbox. You don't see it a lot with Nintendo, but you see it a lot with like Xbox and Sony stuff. But like a lot of people are still pointing at the fact that like they're not getting the most out of the PS5 already, and now you're basically like it's going to be like a lot of this stuff is just going to be built in, like, oh, the game's going to look better because of this processing power, it's going to run faster, it's going to look better, all these things, but you're still not using the hardware to its maximum capabilities, which is why I wanted to bring up the Switch 2 leaks. Like a lot of these leaks aren't new. Like we knew a lot of the stuff that they were talking about for the Switch 2, other than like the leaked not, we don't know if it's true yet, model of what the Switch 2 or whatever they're going to call it is looking like, that people are freaking out about and talking about, because it's basically just like a slightly bigger Switch with like some changes to like the base new Joy-Con design. But the comparison that people are drawing here is that Nintendo got so much out of a hybrid console that was running on architecture that was made before the PS4 launched. Like, or when the PS4, it was running on pre-PS4 architecture, essentially, in what it was running with, and they got more out of it. I mean, look at how Tears of the Kingdom looks on Switch. Look at how Mario Odyssey looks on Switch. Like, these games aren't gonna like blow up. Like, even Mario Odyssey with like how it looks and like the art direction and everything with isn't going to compete with Astrobot in terms of graphical fidelity and like all the little details and like how the environments function and stuff. Like, that's just not how it's gonna work. But it ran on the Switch. Like, it was directly made for this, like, this hardware, and it took everything that hardware had and ran with it.
Yeah, Nintendo did more with less,
and it's what they always do. Like, that's just what they always do.
Yeah. And with this PlayStation stuff, it feels like, I don't know. I would feel like the Pro is what the PS5 should have been. Because this is it at its like, not its full power, but of like actual like you said earlier, it's like if you want to do performance mode, you get better visuals.
It feels like you're lacking on like the base PS5 now that you're looking at it, like, oh, so that's what it could be.
Yeah,
and obviously, and that's maybe that wasn't available. That wasn't available.
Yeah, but it also I could see that, like, why the initial reaction to the Pro kind of rubbed people the wrong way then, because that's something we've been seeing a lot with just games as a whole. Like games releasing not in a fully flushed out state. There's still bugs, there's still performance issues, and then and like, but for every all these success stories we talk about in gaming, like what's the main one now? It's Hello Earth Games. What's that game called? The one No Man's Sky, like that, and every other game that launched in a poor state that like had steady improvements over time. As great as it is, as those games eventually did find their footing, it did set a bad standard for developers. It's like, oh, we can just release in whatever state, we can fix it as we go. And so I think that which has soured so many game releases leads me to think, but when I see the PS5 Pro, I think, well, this is the PS5 1.0, and the original PS5 was the early access.
Well, that leads into the conversation of like, what our console refresh is going to look like in the future, since most of the consoles outside of Nintendo stuff are now just versions of PC that run their own OS that is just streamlined for mass audiences or whatever. So are we going to start seeing more mid-generation refreshes that are just, hey, slightly better architecture, things run faster? It's going to be like phones. It's going to be like a phone upgrade instead of like what I mean, and we're already at that. Like even Nintendo has been basically doing that with like that's what the OLED was. Switch OLED was
Right.
like, oh, nothing else except for a better screen, really, and like a changed design on the back for the better kickstand. That was basically it. That's what the 3DS XL was, except for like it was slightly more. It was more powerful and could run a couple games that the regular one couldn't. But like most of what it was just an improvement, like slightly. Like it's still comparable. So the reason I bring this up is more so on the development side of things. It's like something is going to have to give. It's going to either be like, especially with how Astrobot, I don't know how well it's selling overall, but it's doing well enough. So, and that was like a 3-year development cycle. Cause how long is the, 3-ish year development cycle. So if this game can come out in 3 years, the 5-year development cycle is going to have to end at some point, or there's going to have to be something that caves.
I like this very succinct headline from Game Rant. Astrobot is selling very well. That's that. That's the headline. That's It's like, all right.
I just
first
think
week sales are so here's some UK launch details. Astrobot's UK launches. So this is from Christopher Dring, head of GamesIndustry.biz.
Yeah, GBiz.
UK launch is solid. First week sales are 21% higher than the debut of Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart in 2021. Number 2 last week behind Space Marine 2, which is UK's fastest selling Warhammer game. That's a very niche. that's a niche.
It's also a very UK thing. Yeah.
Yeah. More in the next. Yeah. So.
It's
so all right.
well.
So and UK sales are usually a pretty good barometer for
it's
how
been
they do
good.
here in North America. And I'm sure. Oh, this has got to be crushing it in Japan. Like it has to be.
Maddox.
Without question.
Maddox. Yeah. Like the whole point of this is, like I said, something has to give. Nintendo does this thing where it's like, I don't know what the development timeline on most of their games are. They have so many different teams and so many different developers like that we never really hear about that are working on specific things. But some of the turnaround on some of these games are like, it's like a 3-year turnaround for a game. Cause it was 6 years to get from Breath of the Wild to Tears of the Kingdom. And that was with delays because of COVID. So it probably would have been faster without that.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, finish your thought. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, I don't know what has to give here, because go ahead and say what you were gonna say, because then I'm gonna get into like the Switch 2 rumored specs. And wrap this one up.
It seems that it's not actually selling that well in Japan. This is from Game Rant about a week ago. So this is from a September 12th article. Game came out September 6th. It looks like Astrobot is falling short in Japanese game sales, at least according to the latest report from Famitsu via Gemitsu. In its listing for retail software sales for the week of September 12th to September 8th, Astrobot came in second place at under 12,700 copies sold. But that's I would
retail.
say
That's retail. Japan numbers for digital are very like it's hard to track.
This is a low showing for a first party. Yeah, but
PS5s are more.
It should be noted this list only counts a physical copy sold at retail.
Okay, so PS5 is selling poorly. It's selling worse than other Sony consoles have in Japan. It's a little more expensive
they're saying physical copies to retailers are still lower compared to other first party big releases, but like, and now here I am doing revisionist, moving the goalpost. It's not like a Horizon or it's not like a major.
It was
franchise.
never going to be. That's not what this was going to be.
Yeah, it was
that leads into the discussion of like what has to give. Is it development timelines? Is it the graphical fidelity? Is it like what is going to give in terms of like, is it game length? Is it what scale is going to give when Sony realizes that they can't just have 5-year timelines from their big studios to turn around whatever, which is why like Insomniac
or 6 or 8 or however long Concord took.
Yeah, well, that's its own different can of worms when it comes to
remember, because our first episode, I think Concord, when we first did our first episode, I think Concord was like 2 days into its early access window. I remember at the time we were like, well, it doesn't look good, but let's see how it pans. And
didn't pan out well.
Spoiler alert, it didn't pan out. I mean, historic.
Oh yeah, historic like levels of that that was not good. Like that's the first time we've ever seen anything like that happen.
Yeah, and we are still waiting to see what the ramifications of that look like. I know. We'll talk about that. Yeah,
that's literally the next thing on the docket after we finish this. But it's like, I wonder if Nintendo working on older hardware, because here's the specs that have been rumored forever on this Nintendo Switch 2 whatever. Like these have been out there for years. I've covered it a million times. So 12 gigabytes of RAM for memory, up from 4 gigabytes of RAM and memory, 256 gigabytes of UFS, which is Universal Flash Storage, 3.1, which is comparable to some SSDs. It's not as fast as the new ones, but it is much faster than what you might think for just like flash storage normally. Just like it's rumored right now, and is probably true, that the screen is going to be LCD, but the LCD screens now compared to the LCD screens of the base Switch are much better and comparable to older OLED screens. So this screen, this memory, and the RAM or whatever is going to be there are all going to be better, even if it's like older. Like it's going to be better than what it sounds like, just because of like the upgrades that you've seen in that in that tech since. So like all that's going to be great. It's likely going to be backwards compatible. And then obviously we've got like things like DLSS, which is digital learning systems and stuff, AI upscaling because of the chips, not because they're putting AI stuff into their console. Calm down. Like I heard arguments about that going on when people are talking about like, what is DLSS? What are these? It's because the chips themselves use the AI that everybody likes.
Yes,
to
this
help
is good
run
AI.
games better.
This is the good AI.
This is the AI that everybody wants because it helps bring down costs of hardware, because the hardware itself will help run the games at a higher fidelity, higher frame rates, higher graphical fidelity. Like everything is going to run better because of this chipset that is in the Switch 2 if the DLSS is there, because it is going to keep what the hardware actually has to do outside of the chip lower, which makes everything else better. So the whole point
calm
of this,
calm down woke journalists. No.
Yeah, calm down everybody. But so by comparison, this is going to be comparable. We'd have to run spec tests, and obviously Nintendo games are going to run better than regular games on like ports or whatever. But this is going to be comparable in most areas to what the Steam Deck has now, and it is going to fall somewhere between what a PS4 and an Xbox Series S is in terms of overall performance, if the chipset is what we think it's going to be. Yeah. So,
which is a big step up for the Switch.
It's huge, absolutely
huge step up.
This is going to make ports so much easier. The DLSS is going to save a lot of time when it comes to having to like make sure things can run like certain ways on this console. Like it's going to this console is going to be a monster if any of this is true. If even like most of this is true, it's going to be great. But that goes to show like Nintendo was working on older hardware and getting the most out of that hardware, and it became the best-selling console of all time. Most people don't care about the graphical fidelity to the extent that the PlayStation and like some PC gamers like tout it. Like everybody wants the games to look good and run well.
Yeah.
But it only has to look good to an extent for it to like meet most casual gamer standards.
I would performance is always going to be, they're both important, but performance is always going to have that edge. If the game is good and
it runs well and looks good, not great.
Looks fine.
Yeah. Like fine if the game is amazing, good if the game is like just a regular game. Like there's a baseline that most people are fine with. Like I'm fine with if a game runs.
It's like those scales. It's like the scales where it's like if you don't have a lot of, you know, like you said, if the performance is really great, then it can make up for, you know, maybe a lack of graphical quality.
Yeah,
but not like we're not talking about graphical performance. If it like, you know, stutters and there's screen tearing, that's different. We're talking about like
the difference between like, okay, if a game – looks and plays like Tears of the Kingdom, no one's going to care that game is not running at like whatever graphical fidelity it could on a PlayStation 5.
Mm-hmm.
But if a game is running like Scarlet and Violet, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, then people will care.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll really see how this works if just purely based on like an improved chip. If Scarlet and Violet runs better on the new Switch, then it will. I want to see the baselines. I want to see benchmarks and stuff before we really get into that. But
yeah,
we've been walking around in circles here. But the whole point is something's gonna give in terms of development timelines, and it's gonna give within the next 3 years, because we are currently not in a state where 5-year development timelines for AAA games that may or may not hit. It's not sustainable at the scale.
Yeah.
It's not,
hits do not guarantee safety. Bungie is a great example of that. Their most recent expansion, which I'll admit I have not played as much. I kind of fell off Destiny the past couple years. The funny story of me getting into Destiny, never played the first one, didn't even touch it. I was a big fan of the YouTube channel Funhouse, who sadly were shut down along with the rest of Rooster Teeth. Fuck you, Warner Brothers. They had a Destiny 2 clan, and I love Funhouse so much that when I saw they were having a Destiny 2 clan, I jumped online, like followed the link and joined the clan. I was like, great. I was like, oh, I need to get Destiny 2 now. This was like launch day. And so then I went picked up Destiny 2, and I enjoyed it, but I'll admit I did fall off a little bit. I ended up putting about 442 hours in it, so I got my time. But
I played like 20 hours when the Shadow of whatever expansion dropped a couple years ago, right around when it went free to play. I think
Shadow Moon.
I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
It was right around when it went free to play, I think.
Beyond Shadow Keep.
Bro, right? I don't know. All I know is I put 20 hours into the game, and I was like, I'm good, man. It was fun. I had a good time with playing with friends, but I'm not like that kind of gamer. Like I'm MMO.
I found myself putting less and less time with each like season, each like new expansion. Especially like, you have to pay for new expansions each time, and it's like, okay, first I was like, great, yeah, I want more, and it's like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll try it, and it's like, I don't want to get this one. But like we said, this most recent expansion, the final shape,
critically acclaimed, basically like the end of Destiny as we know it, in terms of how they're going to update the game and how they're going to do this or that or whatever.
Yes.
Heard nothing but good things about it. I know a bunch of people that worked on the game, like, hey, guess what? As soon as that launches, it didn't meet expectations. We're going to fire 300 people. Well, that's not true. It was 300 people over 2 firings, and one of them was like late last year too. But like, still downsizing a studio after releasing same thing that happened with friggin' Xbox and I'm blanking on the name of the
Hi-Fi Rush. The Hi-Fi
Rush studio. I can't remember. They always blank on their name right as I'm about to say their name. But yeah, like same thing there. Release a critically acclaimed game that meets every Tango
Gameworks.
Hey, meets every metric that ever wanted. It praised internally, up for multiple awards, wins multiple awards. No, you're still getting canned.
Thank God for
Crafton, and now there's all these comments from the Crafton CEO that's like, we don't know if the second one's gonna make money, but that's not what we're here for. And it's like, okay, I don't like the vibe that this.
We're not,
but I don't want to. I'm not. Like, we're not talking about.
You shouldn't. Why are we saying this?
Yeah, there's enough stuff that we got to cover. So we'll move into the rough year for big studios. We just mentioned the Destiny stuff. We talked about Concord a little bit already, and now we're going to talk about it a little more because reportedly, this is I'm pretty sure first reported by Ethan Gach. Ethan Gach. I believe it's Gach at Kotaku. I can never pronounce his last name right. Reporting that Ryan Ellis stepped down from his position as the lead at basically the lead at Firewalk Studios. Lead at Firewalk Studios, and the entire studio is basically in a state of limbo as it waits for the fallout of what happened and Sony pulling the game and all this other stuff.
For quick synopsis for those who somehow don't know about this. Well, but like I said, we talked about this in the first or episode 0 of the podcast. It was right when early access window started. We're like, oh, it doesn't look great, but let's see how it goes. Here's how it went. 2 weeks after the game launched, they shut it down completely, full refunds, and that's it. Just 6, 7, 8 years of development. How much money went into it? The reviews weren't even bad. The reviews were just like, eh. Which is almost worse. It's like
that's the worst you can. So there's two minds of thought there. It's meh is the worst you can get because you're not going to leave any kind of impact whatsoever. So even if you release more content, so like for example, we talked about Hello Games earlier and No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky left such a bad. Now, given the reaction to No Man's Sky launch was worse than the launch itself. No Man's Sky overpromised, and it was partly because of the deals that they had with Sony and like all these other things for promotion that overpromised. They were not the only game to do that, but they were by far the one that got the most flack for it. So that game launched and got so much backlash that when that game turned itself around and started releasing good content updates and changing things and getting like the player base that was loyal to it from the start to start being like, oh no, this game is actually good. We're not just like here because we enjoyed the experience for what it was. It's the same thing with Cyberpunk. Like the game launched in a bad state, turned a lot of people off, and then over time slowly turned itself back into a solid product and then released its DLC, which was critically acclaimed, amazing from start to finish. Yep. Like there's stories of that kind of stuff going from bad to really good. But there's much fewer stories going from meh to really good because meh leaves no kind of impact. So like there's no
meh is forgettable, whereas like everyone remembers the discourse around No Man's Sky, the debacle with like, I mean, Sony had to take Cyberpunk off their store for PS4 users because it was running so poorly. You know, I mentioned Jedi Survivor as well. That had a bit of a shaky launch with performance-wise. That improved over time. And yeah, so it's in such a bad spot because the reviews and the consensus around the game itself was kind of meh, fun moments, but you know, characters that were kind of forgettable. There was no one that really popped that stood out the way you see in other hero shooters like Overwatch and Valorant. And whereas those games kind of did something different, you know, Overwatch was, you know, think about all the Overwatch clones that have come out.
Overwatch was the first of its kind in a genre that was basically unexplored to that point because it was taking elements from multiple different kinds of other shooters.
And then with Valorant, you know, with Valorant taking, you know, a tactical shooter, you have Counter-Strike, the Juggernaut, you know, it's over there doing its own thing. And then you've got Rainbow Siege doing its own thing because it, you know, I wouldn't even say like CS, like they're similar, but I wouldn't even say they're that similar.
They're adjacent, but they're nowhere close to like.
And so Valorant was kind of the first to take those like abilities from hero shooter and apply them to a tactical shooter. Whereas this game was just kind of a hero shooter. A lot of the same game modes you see, you know, in games like Call of Duty and any other like free to play or new shooter title. You know, domination, control the point, you know, team deathmatch, all the same stuff, and there's just nothing there. And then, so that stuff was all meh. And then the bad part was the numbers. Like, I mean, the player numbers it reached its peaks were nothing. Like absolutely nothing, and then they gambled on this $40 price point, trying to do something like, oh, this is the counter to all your free to play titles that, you know, you have to keep paying for season passes and new cosmetics and finding heroes.
Everybody was like, they were trying to zig when the zag is clearly just the way things work for this genre.
But that was 4 or 5 years ago when that would have probably landed, because, you know, that was when, you know, Star Wars Battlefront 2 was pissing people off, and that's when, you know, Fortnite battle passes were like had been around for
this was trying to bring like Overwatch 1 vibes into a Call of Duty and Battlefield laden world. Like, hey, we're gonna be a $40 like not quite Call of Duty and Battlefield priced a full experience where you don't have to pay anything to get the content after you pay the initial fee to get in, which in and of itself is a good idea, but the lack of,
It's
I mean, just look at the comparison between the marketing that Astrobot got compared to what this
Mhm.
got in the same span.
Yeah.
Like, just
Yep.
there was not enough marketing. We didn't hear it. We heard it. We knew about this. It was in existence for a long time. Never saw it. Never heard about it. And then they bring it up right like 2 weeks or 3 weeks before they go into an open beta that's exclusive to people who pre-order the game and are on PS Plus or whatever, before an open beta with more people. Like, if this had like a year lead up, maybe things would have been different. Maybe things would have had like, it wouldn't have flopped. It would have had like an okay turnout. Maybe it would have turned itself around eventually or whatever. But like, to kind of put a cap on this part of the story, it's basically like no one knows what's going to happen next. No one internally,
Right.
no one whatever. Like, now that Ellis
I-
has stepped down, now
Yeah.
we're getting to that, because this part of the story basically like sums it up with people internally talking about it. So, we the two of us speculated, like, when we did the live show portion talking about Concord with Jess, about like how Concord could come back if it ever comes back. So this is from the story at Kotaku, from Gawk. Many within the studio, for many within the studio, it's still not clear what will come next. Three sources told Kotaku they're pessimistic Concord will return, and some have been asked to explore pitches for something completely different. The Firewalk, which is currently around 150 to 170 employees, might work on next. Speculation among some staff has also included whether the studio could be used as co-development on one of Sony's myriads of other first-party titles currently in production. That's what I said was going to happen to Firewalk when we talked about it live. I think this is just going to become a co-development studio, like Bungie is basically being threatened to become if Marathon isn't big. It's just going to become like a glorified, like, they're going to work on their own thing, like on basically like with a small team, but then half their team is going to be dedicated to working on other first-party games, because,
and that's produced bangers in the past. Like, remember the original Portal was essentially a cubicle in the office of Valve.
Valve is famous for that. Valve is famous for just like, hey, we're gonna put like people, like, we're gonna work on all these things, but then like every once in a while, like, we're just gonna be like, hey, we're gonna have a week where you can go into like groups and work on a demo or whatever for whatever you want. If we like the idea, we'll let like a team of 10 go do this for like 6 months or whatever. Like,
but they're unique and they can afford to do that.
They're a private company. They're making billions of dollars doing whatever they want. Like, that's a very different scenario to this. And then to continue that thought, others, however, feel like mass layoffs will be the most likely result of Concord's failure, including the possible shutdown of the entire studio, which sources tell Kotaku is one of the most expensive studios in the PlayStation portfolio on a per-head basis. Some developers are updating their resumes and portfolios. A few have already preemptively exited the studio, and others are waiting to see what a potential severance package will look like before deciding what to do next. So, the three outcomes of this are Concord comes back in some new fashion, but not anytime soon. It's not going to be this year. Maybe early next year at the earliest, but I doubt it.
I think that's the least likely.
Yeah.
I expressed last time that I want that to happen, but and that's for the sake of the developers. What I really want now is for them to be sort of like not given a project, but like, if they're, because the people at Firewalk, they're not just sitting staring at their desks like I'm doing when I should be filling out job applications. They are like concepting and pitching and trying to come up with things.
Especially now that they're worried about what the future of the studio might be.
Yeah. So I would love to see them be able to pursue a project. I think, even though you were saying that PlayStation considers this one of the most expensive studios, like, if you've paid all this money to bring them in and all this stuff,
it's a talented studio. Like, whatever Concord aside, like, if you're paying that much money to keep these people around, then that means the people there are talented and worth the money.
The people coding and doing art and designing gameplay systems and all these things, like, the failure of Concord is not on them. They're talented developers. It's not easy to make a game. I mean, Cale and I couldn't even tell you maybe Cale could. I couldn't tell you the first thing about making a game, like, if my life depended on it. So
remind me at some point to tell you the story of the last time I had to code for a game.
I've never done it, so that speaks to how little I know about game dev. But I would like to see them be given,
the best case scenario here
Yeah.
is they become a support studio until something internally takes off, or maybe they get to lead a new project that is from
Yeah.
another part of the Sony portfolio. Like, I think
Yeah.
that's the best case scenario for both sides. I don't think Sony. I don't know what, like, if you have a studio of 150 people that are super talented that you can just shove onto another project, even if that takes time to
Mhm.
onboard them onto a project, guess how much that's going to speed up that
Yeah.
project?
Yeah.
Like,
No, that's that. I think that makes the most sense. But we've seen
yeah,
these past 2
if
years.
Firewalk
It's
closes
hard.
because of this is going to be like, I don't even know the level of historic flop. Just like,
Yeah.
you go from this game that you're, I mean, this is going to be all on Sony. Like, they didn't market the game, they didn't help. Like, they could have done a million different things to help this game do better, or they could have just been like, hey, we'll make it, like, find a way to make it free to play, we'll find a way to monetize it, put it on PS Plus, just make it a bonus game that you get for free. If you get PS Plus, they can buy it, or they can get it for free on PS Plus forever, and it's just a PS Plus game that's it's an incentive to get PS Plus because you get it for free or whatever. Like, you get free content. Like, who knows? There's a million different ways this could have gone differently, but if they just end up shutting down Concord, pulling it, and then basically turning it into a tax write-off if that's possible, and then shutting down the entire studio, I don't know. Like, that's just one of the biggest black marks in probably gaming history.
And
like,
then
that's wild.
And then we still need to see how this will affect Marathon, but because Bungie, is this other main shooter studio, and they are reportedly considering a $40 price point as well.
See, but
which makes
that's
me feel
that
like
is
which made me feel
also
like they were, which made me feel they were considering like 60 or 70, rather than like going because they're doing an extra. It's an
yeah, we
extraction
talked
shooter.
about this. We talked about this on the live show. That's a different genre,
right?
And that is more in the Helldivers camp than it is the Concord camp in terms of what the content's going to offer and the
Right.
the gameplay loop and stuff. Allegedly, like, we don't know
Yeah.
a lot about the game yet still, but
if you can get a well-designed world with a satisfying gameplay loop in a extraction shooter, then you're gonna do fine. You're gonna do just
especially with
fine.
Bungie's track record, like Bungie's like name, Bungie's track record, the
Yeah.
marketing that game is gonna get. Like,
because even like smaller no-name companies that have come up with like an extraction shooter, like I said this like either on the live show, like I was doing a lot of Gray Zone Warfare coverage, Pro at the Dot. I mean that if these games don't have the longest shelf life in terms of player count and things like that, they don't necessarily that game, for example, doesn't have nearly the amount of players it had when it first launched. But I mean, that's every game, so I don't know why people are upset about that. But I mean, it sold really well, and for a while was like one of the highest performing games on Steam. That's not CS or Dota.
Yep.
Or Banana, whatever the fuck that is.
Yeah, the clicker game. Yeah, I don't know. Whatever, man. It there's a lot to think about here, especially for what this means for game marketing for one, but also just for like what these kind of games will be priced at or like marketed as and everything in the future. Speaking of like a kind of similar situation, but not really. Square Enix again, they're like, so these are newly published briefings, but I believe if I remember the tweet I saw earlier, these are from the last earnings call, but they just got translated officially because Square is weird and doesn't like publish same day earnings in like English too. So like all the stuff that we heard previously was from translations from second party sources. So what this means is another round of news about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth underperforming in terms of sales, most likely compared to Remake if they're basing their sales on Remake. Final Fantasy 16 underperforming, which we already knew about, and then Foam Stars underperforming too, but that's like an asterisk because no one expected that game to like set the world on fire. Like,
I could tell you that Foam Stars wasn't going to do.
As soon as we saw the previews for that game, I was like, this game is going to underperform. But I take it back. As soon as I saw the previews, heard it was a Square Enix live service game, and then also heard that they were charging money for it, I knew that game was never going to perform well. It is going to go live. It's going free to play soon, which is good. Too late to probably save the game, but good. I also think it's still PlayStation exclusive, which is another like notch in. Okay, Square, the decision to go multi-plat should have happened a long time ago. Like, you should have stopped taking these exclusivity deals because you're just limiting yourself. But Square Enix and live service those two things have never gone well. So now that we're here and we're looking at continued underperformance of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which critically acclaimed game, probably going to be in Game of the Year conversation this year. Final Fantasy 16, like very solid game from all accounts, and the DLC was well received. I really want to play it because it's an action game. I love those kind of character action game kind of things on top of the RPG elements and Final Fantasy's bombastic storytelling. But like, this is just another example of, and they're already pivoting. So Square is the example of a company that knows what's wrong and is pivoting. They cancel. Square's biggest problem was overbloating its release schedule with a bunch of games that it would just basically sent out to die. Every Nintendo Direct or every presentation or every third week of the month, you'd hear, oh, Square's making another X RPG and they're putting it out. Cool. If it's not a remake of like a beloved franchise or it's not like a brand new IP that's super cool, it's just going out to die. Harvestella, all the Mana remakes that happened. We just got Visions of Mana that did pretty well critically. Studio got shut down by NetEase this like the week the game, like before the game launched. Like all these things that are like, okay, cool, just a little bit more management and like control over like what you're putting out, when you're putting things out, marketing things and stuff, because these games aren't bad. None of these games are bad. Like Octopath Traveler freaking rules. I love the Octopath Traveler game. Like, and that's a brand new IP with the weirdest name and the weirdest like a whole bunch of stuff like that. But they have winners that have come out of this like period of really strange marketing and like just overzealous, just publishing a game every month basically. So going multiplat after this most recent, I'm assuming we're going to get the third part of the Final Fantasy VII remake trilogy. It's going to be PlayStation exclusive for a little bit because they probably signed a deal already with Sony to do all three as part of like helping with budget and stuff. Whatever the next Final Fantasy game is going to be multiplat. Like after that, the next new Final Fantasy game is going to be multiplat. The next whatever Kingdom Hearts, Octopath Traveler, whatever, like as we're getting more of these games and moving forward, all of them are going to be multiplat. Because that's a good move for Square. So this is an example of, hey, we know why our stuff isn't performing. We're changing that. Foam Star's going free to play. These games coming to PC faster. Going multiplat moving forward. This is an example of a company learning from their mistakes in a way that is probably going to change it for the better. Now we'll see, because Square has a really mixed track record of like business models.
Right.
But I'm hopeful that now that we're seeing, I mean, hey, we're getting like the Dragon Quest remake in a couple days, and guess what? It's not surrounded by other RPGs.
Yeah, I think the decision to go multiplat is the big one. We're already seeing, look at a big name like Xbox already reeling back like pure exclusivity, saying like, oh, we're going to bring these games to PlayStation eventually, including one. What was the one where was Indiana? Yeah, because Indiana Jones, Phil Spencer at one point explicitly said was not going to be a PlayStation game. And now it's going to be a PlayStation.
During talks with like, I don't remember if it was like during the FTC things for either the Bethesda purchase or maybe even the Activision purchase, when they were bringing up like, oh, well, how is exclusivity already part of this thing or whatever. Yeah, like the business model has completely changed for a lot of companies, including Xbox, where Xbox is now like, the consoles aren't going away, but like our entire thing is we're just trying to turn a profit in any way possible. And if we can't sell the box, then we can sell the games on other platforms and we're not losing anything. Like Xbox's market share is already lower than the other two consoles. Like they're not losing anything by being like, hey, if you want to buy an Xbox, you can buy an Xbox. You can get it for cheaper than the other consoles. You can play most of the games that are on the other consoles for cheaper. Game Pass is still a really good deal. They're not losing anything by putting these games out on other platforms, especially if it's timed exclusives to the Xbox still. Like, they're not losing anything. So, because they were already putting stuff out on PC anyways. But guess what? Microsoft is mainly a PC thing. Regardless. They own Windows.
Yeah.
Like,
the Xbox is a PC. It is a PC.
The Xbox is just a side gig to what Microsoft is. So, like, we'll see how this goes for Square. I'm hoping it's good because I like Square.
I think it should be good.
Okay, and then the last bad thing we're going to talk about today, Nintendo and the Pokemon company.
We still have to talk about esports. So
okay, well that's like fun for us at least.
True, that's true.
Nintendo and the Pokemon company are suing Palworld devs over patent infringement. This is literally today. This happened. Oh god, where do I want to start with this? So basically,
this was this inevitable? Because when this game came out, people were like,
it was not inevitable because Nintendo initially released a statement, or the Pokemon Company initially released a statement. I think it was not Junichi Masuda. I don't know. Whoever released the statement on behalf of the Pokemon Company basically said, we are aware and we're looking into it. And the wording of that basically just means, hey, we know, don't ask us anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and this was back like with like a week or two after the game was out and it was breaking records and 2 millions of concurrent players or whatever. So yeah. The key thing to note before we get into this is patent, not copyright. This is a patent infringement, not a copyright infringement. So they're not going after the designs or the visuals or anything like that. They're going after patent infringement, which most people take to mean gameplay specific, not not visual or any kind of asset thing, which is what people thought was originally going to be a lawsuit if something happened legally. Was because of like rumored uses of assets and like similarities or whatnot. So this is reading from Forbes, and this is from the Nintendo section of it. This lawsuit seeks an injunction against infringement and compensation for damages on the grounds that Palworld, a game developed and released by the defendant, infringes multiple patent rights. Nintendo will continue to take necessary actions, blah, blah, blah. This is so what this means is Nintendo is going after Pocket Pair, the developers of Palworld, for infringement over patents. We do not know what those patents are. The Palworld devs don't even know what those patents are. I'm going to go, the more important statement here is not Nintendo's, which is just serving the papers, essentially. It is the statement that publicly the Palworld devs made on Twitter and their website and everything. I'm going to read this in full because it's very important. Regarding the lawsuit, yesterday a lawsuit was filed against our company for patent infringement. We have received notice of this lawsuit and will begin the appropriate legal proceedings and investigations into the claims of the patent infringement. At this moment, we are unaware of the specific patents we are accused of infringing upon, and we have not been notified of such details. Pocket Pair is a small indie game company based in Tokyo. Our goal as a company has always been to create fun games. We will continue to pursue this goal because we know that our games bring joy to millions of gamers around the world. Palworld was a surprise success this year, both for gamers and for us. We were blown away by the amazing response to the game and have been working hard to make it even better for our fans. We will continue improving Palworld and strive to create a game that our fans can be proud of. It is truly unfortunate that we will be forced to allocate significant time to matters unrelated to the game development due to this lawsuit. However, we will do our utmost for our fans and to ensure that indie game developers are not hindered or discouraged from pursuing their creative ideas. We apologize to our fans and supporters for any worry or discomfort that this news has caused. As always, thank you for your continued support of Palworld and Pocket Pair. So, the Palworld devs aren't even aware of the what they're infringing upon, because this is how Nintendo operates, right? Now, I will say, this is very strange this is a not unprecedented, but very strange happenstance in the world of Pokemon and Nintendo copyright stuff. So copyright, I say copyright as if this isn't the patent thing. The way Nintendo and the Pokemon Company typically operate is that if something is close to infringing on something of theirs, whether it be copyright or something or other.
Patent.
Well, the patent thing is the new thing. If it's typically if it's copyright infringement, so like a fan game or like a tournament or something. So if a Smash tournament is using a modded thing to run online or running like Project Plus or whatever for like a Smash tournament, or like a Pokemon ROM hack, for example, because they've done this before. They will either serve a DMCA to the website or whatever's hosting a thing, the tournament, or they'll serve a cease and desist to just completely stop operating, and that's when you get actual legal papers where you have to take action or you will get sued. So this is more on the legal side of like Nintendo going after like some of these mobile game companies that they've gone after for using Pokemon as like just completely using the Pokemon IP or whatever. But that's always copyright. That's always using the characters, using the gameplay, or using direct characters and stuff. This is patent. We don't know anything about it. I don't think we've seen this before from Nintendo. Maybe for like some Joy-Con stuff. I think they got sued for Joy-Con stuff.
Is this the Pokemon Company suing, or is this Nintendo?
Both. It is a dual, because Nintendo and the Pokemon Company are separate companies.
Right.
Nintendo is a part. they are a third of who owns Pokemon. So anytime
Mm-hmm.
Pokemon is mentioned as a Nintendo thing, technically yes, but it is technically second party, not first party, because Nintendo is only a third of the Pokemon company, along with Game Freak and Creatures.
Mm-hmm.
So the Pokemon company and Nintendo both issued this jointly. So this is both of them going in on this. So this is a very big deal, because the patent. So getting into what the patent might be. So this is from Stephen Totillo again. Definitely follow him if you want like actual like hard hitting reports and news and stuff. He's like the best in the business when it comes to like not necessarily like inside gaming stuff, but like the more like hard hitting like, oh, I'm gonna go look at a patent, or I'm gonna go talk to the source. So he dug into a patent that was reportedly listed in late 2021 by Nintendo in the both the US and Japan patent offices, basically, that looks like an example of a person throwing a capture device, so the Pokeball in this case, at a Pokemon in a field, and then a progression tree that looks
at a creature.
Yes, and then a progression tree that looks exactly like what would end up basically becoming like
the
progression
gameplay mechanic for catching and not catching
this is basically
pals or creatures.
This is basically outlining the open world catching that was first shown in Pokemon Legends Arceus, and then the progression system of the Pokedex in Image 2 for Pokemon Legends Arceus specifically, where you catch a specific number of Pokemon to complete missions to upgrade your Pokedex and stuff.
Yeah. So it's a gameplay mechanic that they're patenting.
And
it's not like an image.
Yes, and it's not the only one either. And so there's like in use of there's like a flow chart of like how this like the systems work, like a whole bunch of other stuff. If you go look at stuff, you can go see the published dates like June 22nd, 2023. Patents registered to Nintendo and the Pokemon Company. Worth noting that this is a patent application that might not have been assigned. The patent was assigned and registered as valid in 2023 in Japan, which is where this is important, because this is where the lawsuit is taking place, is in Japanese court in Tokyo, because Palworld and Pocket Bear is a Tokyo-based company. So here's that, and then let's see if I can find the other thing I was talking about. Specifically, a business lawyer commented on the initial serving of the papers, basically the public statement from Nintendo, that says, probably going to need more specifics before I can comment more completely, but Palworld is such a different type of game for Pokemon. It's hard to imagine that what patents, not copyrights, might have been even plausibly infringed. Initial gut reaction is Nintendo may be reaching. If it's just that single patent based on like what looks to be the Legends Arceus capture system, which yes, it is similar to how Palworld operates, but the progression system and some of the other things are very different from how Arceus operates. This does seem like a reach, and if that's the case, then this is a very Nintendo gets the rap of being like very litigious with how they serve copyright infringement stuff and everything, taking down videos, taking DMCAing tournaments, occasionally taking down fan games and stuff, even though that's like in the minority of what they do. This would be unprecedented levels of like, oh no, this is the first time a game that uses similar elements to some of our things is reaching levels of success that are relative to ours.
Because I think I do can't. I'm not defending the Pokemon Company for this, but I'm trying to think of other games that use like an apparatus. You throw an apparatus to capture a creature. I mean, there's hundreds of Pokemon knockoffs that they go after.
That is not what they're going after. If the patent that is in question is the one that Steven posted and found from the like Legends Arceus era, basically, and that's not going into like some other people that have looked into it and seen like other specific dates and stuff. So what we said was just from Totillo's like thread and like some of the other stuff and some of these articles that we're reading off of. But basically, if it's just from that era, then there is no other example really, because it's so fresh. Palworld is the only other one that has the same open world approach with the throwing the balls and how the hit the Pokemon in the open world and the ball goes up in the air and it shakes and you see like progression of how it does. Like it's different enough, but it's not different enough to basically, if this patent is valid, which it appears to be in Japan specifically, that Nintendo might have they might have grounds here, which sucks.
It's lame.
It's lame, but it's also like that's what these laws are there for.
Yeah.
Like so,
it's another classic example of you're not wrong, you're just an asshole.
So, and here's a very good explanation of it from Pirate Software, who always has good takes on most of this kind of stuff. That is commenting on it and goes, my assumption is that Nintendo is going after Pocket Pair for the Palsphere mechanic as it directly mirrors the Pokeball. Nintendo has a patent on file for this mechanic, but the dates make it a bit interesting. U.S. patent was filed in May 2024 and approved in August 2024. The Japanese one appears to have been filed in December 2021 and was approved in November 2023. Palworld was announced publicly on June 2021 and launched in January 2024. Important to note, there was no gameplay shown of Palworld in its initial reveal, though. Beyond like the guns and stuff, I don't think there was.
But I think what he's implying is that these patents were made as a response to Palworld because.
The
is that what he's implying?
No, because the December one. Well.
Maybe. December 2022.
December 21. If Palworld was shown in June 2021, but this was
that's what I'm saying.
But if the patent was filed in, he says no.
Months later.
He says appears to be filed in December 2021.
Yes.
And also, this might be directly in response to, guess what launched a month and a half later? Pokemon Legends Arceus. So, might have been filed for the launch of Legends Arceus, especially if gameplay of Palworld was not shown with the Sphere.
Argue. Yeah.
So, this is very loose. Like, we don't have timelines. We won't learn about this until we learn about more, but I'm going to finish the statement here. From this basis, it appears that Nintendo saw a threat and tried to shore up with patents in case Palworld did well. Overall, I feel that patenting mechanics in this way limits games and gives us worse games overall. We should be copyrighting characters, art, music, and other content. Patenting mechanics sucks for everyone. Patents aren't my forte, but this definitely seems the realm of possibility. Waiting to see how this all plays out for my assumption to be correct. So that is the biggest thing we need to take away here. This sucks. Yes. Regardless, I'm not going to be regardless of what the basis is here. The concept of this sucks. I love Pokemon. Pokemon is my favorite. Is one of my favorite video game franchises. One of my favorite media franchises. I want to see Pokemon succeed, but if it comes at the cost of basically patenting a game mechanic and limiting what games we might see in the future that could rival and potentially push Pokemon to be better, because they might lose market share if they're not better. Because a lot of this has devolved into Pokemon people being, or Pokemon haters, or people that are upset at like the last couple Pokemon games. Be like, well, maybe Game Freak should make a good game, and then they won't have to do like, blah. That's dumb. That's stupid. That has nothing to do with this. Go take your terrible takes somewhere else. The point of this is this sucks for game development in general. This does limit the ability for a company to then come up with things that could combat Pokemon in ways and then push Pokemon to be better, because competition is good.
Yes.
In almost every instance of business. But the issue then becomes, while this isn't a good look for Nintendo or TPC, and it does come off currently based on the information that we're pulling from that single patent that we've seen, which we don't know if that is what is being involved, but very likely is. At least one of them. We don't know if there's multiple patents or whatever. And it does seem like this is basically like Nintendo and TPC being like, oh, that's a sizable competitor. We can use this to like limit them or whatever. This we can't sensationalize it yet. Yeah. Once we hear about the case, see the court documents, see what is being brought up and like what is alleged infringement and like the specific notes from what Nintendo is calling out and what Pocket Pair responds with, then we can sensationalize it if it is as bad as some people are putting it out to be. I hope it's not that bad, but this not a good look. The thing is here, I saw some people worried about like how this might affect like Cassette Beast or Tim Tim or like some of these smaller games. Those games aren't using the open world mechanics. So if that is what the infringement is based on and like this whole lawsuit is based on, they're not going to be affected regardless. Like classical Pokemon style of, oh, you enter a battle with something and go into a menu and then it is an RPG style menu where you throw something at the thing to catch the thing. That is not what appears to be on the line here. So those games are going to be fine. And even with this, if this goes through and Pocket Parrot loses the lawsuit, that does not necessarily mean Palworld's going to have to go anywhere.
Yeah,
They just have to pay to use the patent or pay to license it or whatever.
Mm.
Like I'm again not an expert on this, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Nintendo's just gonna. There's no way that I think this ends with Palworld just disappearing.
Yeah, no.
Or Nintendo getting to take the rights to Palworld or anything like that.
Yeah,
I don't think that is what Nintendo. I don't think that's what Nintendo's going for. I don't think that's what the Pokemon Company's going for, and I don't think that's what the end result will ever end up being. I think that this is just like worst case scenario. Now that is worst case scenario is that Palworld disappears, has to go away. Worst case scenario is, in my opinion, is Palworld has to change something drastically or pay a big fee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because if they didn't know that they were infringing on this, like what?
What's the judge gonna do? Yeah,
I know. Well, Japanese court is very, very strict.
That's true. It's very Japanese law in general is very.
We're going to have to wait a while to see how this plays out, because I brought this up because I covered this when it first happened. But the Pokemon Company literally just won a lawsuit against a mobile game, like a $50 million lawsuit against a mobile game that directly used like Pokemon assets for this mobile game, and that took 3 years.
Yeah,
with clear like conditions.
Yeah, this is harder to argue for Pokemon.
It is, but that was also, I believe, in Chinese court.
Okay.
Or in some form, not necessarily in just. It's not two Japanese companies going against each other. This could be wrapped up very quickly, depending on how quick this gets escalated. But we can't sensationalize it yet. I just wanted to bring it up because I have covered a ton of this crap. Whether it be Nintendo going after tournaments or Pokemon Company taking down fan games and Relic Castle and all this other stuff. Like, Did You Know Gaming literally posted a video earlier this month talking about Pokemon fan games that have been taken down in the past and how unlikely it is that Nintendo and the Pokemon Company is to go after a fan game. Like, the very specific scenarios that have to happen for it to happen. This is almost unprecedented. This is the first time we've seen something like this from Nintendo or the Pokemon Company. So we'll have to really see how this plays out.
I think we can land the ship that patents are lame. The one thing this reminds me the most of, and I get to say fuck Warner Brothers for a second time in this podcast. The studio Warner Brothers, I believe Warner Brothers Games patented the Nemesis system from the Shadow of War.
Yeah, they patented the cool system.
which is so cool. I love those games.
It's
so cool. For those who haven't played those games, it's kind of like, Assassin's Creed style gameplay, stealth, climbing stuff.
We're talking about Lord of the Rings, Shadow of Mordor.
Lord of the Rings, Shadow of War, Shadow of Mordor.
Yeah.
Shadow of Mordor and then Shadow of War were 1 and 2. Really cool game. And one of the coolest mechanics they have is a Nemesis system. It's a hierarchy of like randomly generated orcs with their own personalities and traits, strengths and weaknesses, and it's like a flowing, like, moving hierarchy. So when you kill one takes its place. If a lowly orc kills you and you like regenerate because you're like half ring wraith or this sort of weird thing, if you die, you come back, but that orc gets a promotion. Then he can go all the way up to chieftain, but then he can go back to that orc. You can corrupt him and make him on your side. Now he's a sleeper agent. Now he's a chieftain, and it's this really cool, intricate, flowing system that has all this like natural narrative, like you can make your own stories outside the main plot, and they put a patent on it, and so now no one else can do something cool like that, which sucks. And so it's like, how dare you make something cool and then say no one else? It's like, I invented a fun game. No one else can play it. Me and the friend that I pay to be friends with me, we can play it, and that's it. It sucks.
I will say that sucks ass, and I think that's probably a worse case scenario than this, because that system is like, bro, imagine if that system was free to use.
Yeah,
we would have so many. Dude, imagine if that system could be used in an RPG.
Yeah, like think about like games like imagine like a fantasy kind of game where like Assassin's Creed. No, they don't really. It's not really like they have like there's like a tree of people that you can assassinate, but it's not procedurally generated. It's not like and some of these orcs are just hilarious. Like some of them have like some absolutely bizarre weirdo traits. Like one had like a spider laying an egg sack in it, and so then like he attacks you and he's like he gets all up in your face and he's like I can hear him crawling in my brain, and they're absolute like weirdos, and it's so fun. And that's why it was so frustrating for them to sort of lock that down with a patent and not let anyone play with it. We should get to the esports stuff.
I just wanted to briefly mention as soon as we finished talking about something Tilla posted, he did a deep dive on the Flappy Bird revival, which I'll probably touch on with Xavier tomorrow. I'll tune into that because I'm curious about that. That's a whole mess and a half. I don't want to talk about crypto BS right now. Okay, now we get to do a segment that we lovingly refer to as we want content for social media. So we're going to do our first ever draft, first inaugural Timesphere draft time.
Mm-hmm. I can't find the draft song in the soundboard for Discord, so that's disappointing.
Don't worry, it wouldn't pick up on my end anyway.
The NBA draft chime. I'll intro this. So drafts are fun. Drafts are in every podcast now. It's a new hotness. And we are esports people, and so we have to talk about esports eventually. And so what we're doing here is we are going to, for this draft, we each own and operate an esports organization, which we would never do in real life because that's just a money sink. But so what we're going to do is we're going to snake draft games in esports that we want to enter. But we want to sign players, we want to sign a roster, we want to jump into these games. We don't have to worry about like a budget in terms of like how much money do you have, like how much exact money
but we're going to use the logic of like what's the upside, what's the expenses, like right. we know enough about most of these esports so we can talk about that.
So I wrote down some factors that we should consider for this. Entry barrier. This could be either the cost, how much it would cost to enter into this, as opposed to like, is there a clear and cut path to being a top tier team?
Yeah, is it like a buy? Is it like a buy-in? Is it like like you have to buy your spot? Is it like you have to qualify through regulation? Like all
the amount of talent available. This in terms of like how big is the player base? How many aspiring pros are out there? Could you like based on like people who are currently available right now? Then for some games we're going to know a lot more about this than others, but we're just going to sort of spitball based on like could we sign a legit competitive team. And then long-term sustainability, viability of a title. I have no plans to sign a Halo roster. I'm just going to say this now. I worry about Halo Infinite, how well it's doing, how displeased with the state of the game most pros who are still there are.
Bring back MLG already, you cowards.
Yeah, you have it. Just do it. Okay, so we're going to do I'm going to pull up everyone's favorite coin, which is
I was going to say, I have it up. Do you want to do heads or tails?
I'll say heads.
Okay. It is heads. You get to go first.
Okay. I'll get to go first. So I'll put myself in the top row, and I'll put you in the bottom row. And this feels easy for me. I'm going to take Counter-Strike. This is, especially now, I feel like Counter-Strike is an even better time to get into right now. It is going back to the true, first of all, biggest game on PC in the world at any time. Maybe against, it's probably competing against League.
It's the biggest public number game.
In terms of public numbers we can see, it's Counter-Strike every day of the week if you look at Steam charts. Not only is there a clear path to qualifying for majors, which are the big, this is the big event you want to reach when you're a team. You get that sticker money, you get the extra set of eyes on you, a lot of sponsor potential there. Now heading into 2025, because Valve said, "Oh, right, we have other competitive games that aren't Dota. Let's pay attention to them once in a while."
The actuality of what they did is
until Gaben shows up to a major. This is my
Gaben hasn't been to a TI in 4 years.
He does a video. He at least does a video.
Yeah, because he loves Dota. Dota's like his baby. The whole thing. So here's the deal.
This is what I'm talking.
No. You
we're
shut your mouth.
Ugly stepchild.
Shut your mouth, Scott. Because here's what actually happened. What actually happened is Valve was like, Dota doesn't need a competitive scene anymore, so we're gonna go do the other things. They don't even do a competitive scene anymore. You want to know what the lead up to TI was this year? They put out a blog post in like late May that was like, here's the 4 teams that are getting invited. Here's the dates for the qualifiers. Have fun. They didn't do anything this year.
Up until like this year, when they finally said, "Oh, we need to make like an actual," instead of just being like up until like this, like 2023, decisions that Valve have made about Counter-Strike have been like very small scale, like very bare bones decision. But finally, and what leads me to take them first overall, I was going to take them first overall anyway, but what leads me to say this now is they are essentially stopping tournament organizers from like having permanent partner teams. So essentially, no more like, franchise leagues. Essentially,
okay, that's good. Yeah, that's been a thing in Dota forever. Like you can't just
so they are
for no reason.
yeah. So they had that. Not that like that like organizations just started doing that. And Valve stepped in and said, "No, this isn't what we want. This is kind of against the spirit of Counter-Strike." So right now it's ESO Pro League, and it's I believe this is the last season with permanent partner teams. Now it hasn't been so egregious that like all the permanent partner teams pay to be there and suck. Most of them like there are 12 teams that made playoffs. 9 of them are partner teams. Like for the most part, they're like
the majority is gonna be fine.
teams.
That's the same with Dota. Like if you go to an event in like the Middle East or whatever, as of the last couple of years, like the big egregious one was like, why is Nigma Galaxy here? Like they haven't had results in like 2 seasons. Why are they here? And it's because they're like, most people think it's because they're based out of that, which is fine because a lot of teams can't travel there or something for other reasons. So like having that team there just as a staple is like whatever. But I get what you mean.
Yeah, every team that's like a permanent partner team with Pro League is either like a legacy team, like an Astralis or Ninjas in Pajamas, although NIP like would definitely not be at this tournament if not for permanent partnership.
I haven't heard that name forever.
Or they're like a top, or they're a top tier team, like a G2, a FaZe, a Mouse, Liquid, Navi. These are all like, and then but these are gonna be gone starting next year. Pro League, they're not gonna have it. There's none of this for Pro League's probably the big one at this point, but no more permanent partner teams. You still got the open quals, the closed quals for majors. There's this amateur to pro pipeline, like endless talent. There's like if I want to make a European roster, like there are so many guys to pick from. Like we're not going to be like a major winner right away, but there's still so many like free agents. There's so many young talent you can pick up. And like G2 just found Monacy, like a child, and it's like, oh, he's an opping prodigy. Great, here we go. We're set for the next 4 or 5 years. Like you can just get lucky and find guys like this. So yeah, and it's Counter-Strike. I love Counter-Strike. It's why I got into esports. This is an easy one. Biggest esport in the world. Come at me. Yeah. But you get 2. You get to go back to back.
Oh yeah, I guess I do get. I forgot this was a Snake.
Snake.
I will say the last time I heard anything from the last time I ever had contact with NIP and or heard about NIP in any significant function outside of just like random emails that I get every once in a while, was when they signed Chicken Fighters in Dota 2 and then left the league, left subsequently in November of 2022 or of 2020. And they have never.
The last time NIP made headlines in CS was when they signed Device, 4-time major winner, away from Astralis, who then promptly played a few matches and then spent most of the time on the inactive portion of the roster. This was like the biggest like money paid for like a CS transfer ever. I remember it because
the Nicholas Batum to the Hornets of CS:GO.
I mean, Device. I think it's a little. I'm not going to compare Device to Nick Batum.
The Evan Turner to the Portland Trailblazers of CS.
I remember seeing the prep, like a little thing from NIP saying, "Oh, it's going to be a press release in the morning." And I was like, "This is probably nothing like a sponsor or like some like higher up change." And then the follow up got sent to me, and I'm like, "Oh shit! Oh fuck!" And I like scramble to like get some news out. But all right, your picks.
Oh, this is a pain in my butt because there's like do I go for like the guaranteed wins just because I know numbers are there, or do I go for the fun stuff? And the answer for the first pick is I'm just going to take League of Legends
Hmm.
because that is art. Like if CS:GO is the biggest public thing, then League is just the biggest game. Obviously,
Yeah.
not the biggest game in the world, just the biggest like probably esports related game. I know there's a bunch of others, some of which I have on my list. But yeah, League is just like I don't care about League. I do not watch League. I watch Worlds every once in a while, especially if friends are watching. Then sure, I keep up with like the biggest names in terms of like, oh, what teams are they on, or oh, are they still active or whatever. But I have never actively watched like a League of Legends playoff series or an LCS or what anything like that. I do not watch it. I just know that a bunch of people really like it. The game itself is insanely popular, and that alone means barrier to entry is low, talent pool is high, and like the money is there. So Riot has endless money. Um, I would take 2xKO at some point on this list if I could, but I'm not going
Taking
to.
now.
No,
Okay.
I'm not going to that because I'm there are concerns. So like, if we're talking fighting games, I do want to rule check here. I have to take the individual fighting game, right? I can't take the FGC. Like I
I
can't
thought about I thought about this.
because if I can take the
Right.
FGC, I'm taking the FGC right now. Just because.
You can take the FGC.
Okay, then I'm taking the
You can take
FGC
yeah.
because that has the biggest breadth of
Yeah.
like because what I'm counting as FGC is anything that shows up to like a combo breaker or like an Evo, like the big titles that like every year you get like two fresh ones that'll replace the older ones. You get the Street Fighter, you get the Tekken, you get the Mortal Kombat of whatever that year is. So you get Street Fighter 6, Mortal Kombat 1, Tekken 8, you get Grand Blue, you get Guilty Gear, you get what like the rotation of those games underneath that
Yeah.
kind of tier. You get the big four, which are Tekken, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, and then Guilty Gear, and then the cavalcade of whatever comes under that, and then occasionally you get like Smash or whatever if it's like a big enough tournament or a small enough tournament, depending on what your metrics are. So I'll take that. It's the biggest breadth of like, okay, cool. You get a bunch of personalities, bunch of cool streamers. Sometimes your games pop off. Street Fighter tosses a lot of money in Street Fighter prize pool. You get a bunch of really cool content creation stuff, like the Sage Slam is finals happening right now, and at TwitchCon with a bunch of streamers that are huge that are getting into fighting games for the first time.
Yeah.
Feels like with the upcoming, and that's why I didn't want to just take 2xKO is because I'm still concerned. And I haven't written my article on it that I wanted to do. I'm still concerned about where 2xKO fits into like the hybrid of what Riot wants and what the FGC wants, because they're saying the right things, but I want to see how that's implemented, how that fits
Right.
in. I think they're going to do a good enough job, especially in the opening year, but I want to see how that fits in. And if that falls in the FGC, then great, because it's going to be the biggest new fighting game on the market ever.
Yeah.
And it's going to be the first time Riot people, like Riot fans, are going to be able to be like, oh, I can just go to a tournament and play. I don't have to qualify for something.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm
Yeah.
interested to see how that goes. But that's like that
Yeah.
the duality of my mind, picking League because it's the biggest thing, and then picking the FGC because it's the most fun.
Yeah. And also, like I think you mentioned barrier to entry being really low for
Oh yeah,
for
like
for, for
well,
FGC.
I thought
Whereas League, it's like, well, not so anymore. You used to have to like pay stupid buy-ins, but I think League is moving away from that.
oh, if you're just
Um,
talking about competition, then so the difference here is League's barrier to entry in terms of playing the game itself and like learning it probably lower than a fighting game, just because
mhm.
you can play League and not play ranked and learn the game and be at an acceptable level to just play with friends. Fighting
Mhm.
games are, while like the stigma of like, oh, fighting games are really hard to get into is very like overblown, especially nowadays with how accessible like modern controls and stuff are in like Street Fighter and Tekken. Uh, and then like obviously Smash is in there too. But the
Mhm.
idea of, oh no, you're gonna go play Guilty Gear Strive in like year 4, or oh, you're gonna go play Dragon Ball Fighters or Fighter Z on the new patch that basically turned into like Marvel versus Capcom. You're gonna go play Marvel
Mhm.
versus Capcom. Like the variance of the barrier to entry there is different, but in terms of competing, yeah, you just roll up, pay the tournament fee, and you're in. and you're seated into a bracket, and you have as big a chance as anybody to do whatever you want.
Yeah. No, so it's a good pick. Taking FGC as a whole, I felt like nitpicking games out of it would be kind of
the only thing I would nitpick out of it is like if you wanted to pull like Smash out of it, because Smash is like it's contextual depending on the tournament.
Yeah,
like Combo Breaker has it, CEO has it, but Evo doesn't have it. The last several years, like Cream City Convergence, which is like a Street Fighter major, didn't have it, but it had Tekken. Like. So you can go nitpick that, but like once you get into like, I mean, outside of Smash, even like once 2XKO launches, you're not going to be able to separate it from the FGC. Like it's all going to be it's all a conglomerate of everything from the local you go to in at like whatever venue they're using to Tampa Never Sleeps, the weeklies to the majors. So
yeah, nice. I'm going to.
I already know what you're taking.
So this is one where it's like if I have the budget and I can afford to slog through tier 2. Tier 2 is like a gamble. So I'm taking Valorant. Yeah. I'm taking Valorant. For similar reasons, it's a big player base. Getting to tier 1 is the promised land. You get the portion of bundles, you get the incentives from Riot. You get the portion of sponsorship revenue, the media deals, all that good stuff. The downside to it is you have to play through tier 2, which is currently in a really state of free fall because there is really no money to be made if you're an organization competing in tier 2. It feels like teams are just sort of like going to be jumping in for like the season and jumping out. They're not signing anyone to any long-term deals. They're probably, especially with Premier now going to be a big part of like the in-game tournament system, now being a big part of how you qualify for these tournaments. I think we're just going to see teams just kind of sit back and wait until, oh, here's a new team out of Premier. We're going to sign them for the season, and then it's going to be, they're going to sign them to a few dollars and essentially just take little. It's like the way I like to bet. You take a couple buckaroos and you put it on some like big long shot, and it's like, oh, maybe this will work. And if it doesn't, it's like, oh well, we'll try again, next season. Like future bets, like Bears to win the Super Bowl, which is not looking good. So yeah, I'm picking Valorant just because getting to tier 1 is, whether you're in Europe, Pacific, China, Americas, all of those regions are really thriving from a viewership standpoint. Lots of talent all across the board in all of those regions, especially in China now, especially here in America still. We're seeing already some, the potential of finding and getting a star like Tens, and just sort of watching the fan base kind of go nuts for this person, and then that becomes an asset to an organization as well. It's just super valuable. For my next pick, I'm getting in on the ground floor for anyone else. And I'm keeping my eyes, if I'm in charge of my esports organization, I'm keeping an eye open for the first great Deadlock players. We see how the Valve ecosystem, even if Valve doesn't exactly care about esports as much as the people in Valve esports, they will grow. And there is a lot of eyes on this game right now. I think it's doing it. I think even though it's not my personal cup of tea from like an actual game, because of my unwillingness to really go deep into MOBAs, and you could probably talk a lot more about Deadlock to a degree, but I can't shake this feeling that this is going to really be a mover once it gets into full release. Once people start hosting tournaments, I think and Valve does what they do best. They take a big step back. They let the community run with it. They don't try and jump on it like Blizzard and try and make it this whole big thing yet. They're like, let it grow naturally. If it's something there, great. And I think there's something there. And so I'm betting on Deadlock.
Yeah, I think you threw. I think Valve is. I think that you're right, and that the eyes are on it. That the entire
I took Counter-Strike 1 overall. I'm fine. I don't care. Like we're not 3.
Yeah.
I got
But
I got the franchise player in the first round.
Yeah, so you're sitting on house money with that, but the
Yeah.
the idea I think
Case money, sticker money, all the money.
yeah, Deadlock is going to be much more along the lines of I feel closer to a TF2. I think it's going to be the game that Valve just let sure the community will run tournaments and stuff. And there will be a tournament scene for it. I'm sure some tournament organizers will try at least initially, but I don't think it's going to have the CS, the Dota, that kind of stuff. I don't think it's going to have that. I think it is going to be much more of a casual competitive game in terms of it's going to have a very large player base. It's going to sit up there with Valve's going to have 4 of the top however many games now on its own platform. It's going to have CS:GO, it's going to have Dota, and then it's going to have Deadlock, and in those 3 in whatever order, and then TF2 is going to sit up there with its perpetual 70,000 players forever.
Correct.
But I think it's going to be closer to the casual competitive than
this
stuff, which is still a fine pick because community tournaments and even a couple tournaments here or there still be a lot of fun. I'm picking Dota. I think I knew
if I left Dota for you, it was gonna go to you.
I mean, I'm gonna pick Dota. I think that's the game, and this will be in the piece that I was talking about earlier. Is I think in terms of the competitive scene with what Valve is supporting, I think it's worse off than it's ever been before. We're in a kind of no man's land where Valve kind of pulled back too much when they killed the DPC this last year, and was basically oh yeah, it'll be the Wild West of tournament organizers running their own events, and we'll kind of support it here or there, except for the fact that prior to the DPC, we had 6 or 7 tournament organizers running tournaments, and now a lot of those tournament organizers are out of Dota or just dead altogether, and now we're relying entirely on ESL, Dream League, Riyadh Masters, into a couple of tier 1-ish tournaments, maybe tier 2, run by organizations like BetBoom, that are basically the entirety of the season leading up into TI that is barely publicized. Which is fine because guess what? The numbers are still there for viewership. The numbers are still there for the support. With the ESL money and the Riyadh money makes up for the lack of TI money overall because you're getting a wider spread of prize pools that are a higher number than it was for the DPC seasons. So you're going to get more big tournaments. I think Blast is getting into Dota next year again. They ran one tournament a couple years ago that did pretty well, and they're like, oh well, now that it's basically free reign, sure, we'll run a Dota major. So you're going to start seeing more people come back to Dota over the next couple of years. But I think as a game, the game is in a better place than it's been in a long time with how the updates. Basically, Valve pulled back from competitive to focus on
making the game
itself.
better.
So now you get multiple big updates a year. Right now we're in the middle of a 4-act season. We've never seen that before, where we're going to get 2 heroes potentially in the span of 3 months.
And this will stoke the player base a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah. Or not even stoke the player base. There's 600,000 people to 700,000 people that play the game daily.
Yeah.
You don't need to stoke the player base, but as long as you're providing more content more frequently and providing updates. I mean, the update that they did in May, every May they dropped this wild update, or I think it was May this year, where they dropped an update where they basically added 2 new versions of talents for every hero, for all 100 plus heroes, out of the blue. So huge game changing updates every year, along with content seasons where you get more story, more mini games, more characters, more lore, all this cool stuff that adds to the casual enjoyment, and then eventually will translate to some of that player base wanting to go pro, some of that player base feeding into the tier 2 scene. The tier 2 scene needs some work, in some support. That's what the DPC was supposed to do, and then it didn't. The tier 1 scene is a clusterfuck of whatever, but it's a lovable clusterfuck. So
I hate to press you for your final pick,
I know,
but I have pets and humans that need food that are requiring me to.
God, I don't know, because this is the pick where it's okay, I've got my list.
I have a couple in mind for my last one.
Well, because there's the ones that are the wild cards. It's okay, there's Fortnite, which is just a giant player base. There's PUBG, which gets a lot PUBG, which encompasses PUBG Mobile, which is this huge landscape. You got Call of Duty. I'm never touching Overwatch in this draft.
Oh no, absolutely not. I wouldn't.
I guess I'll go with like one of the weird ones to like Western players. I'm gonna go Mobile Legends Bang Bang.
Okay.
Because that's the big like, that's like the biggest one in terms of like those mobile games.
Okay.
That is like got a really big player base, especially in like Southeast Asia.
Mm-hmm.
Like huge, insane player base. Huge viewership, huge numbers, a lot of very low barrier to entry. I know very little about that game at all, but I just hear about it all the time, especially from people comparing Dota to it. So I guess I'm just going MOBA heavy here. I'm just gonna be like, cool. I'm going on word of mouth plus.
I mean, I got Deadlock, so I'm in that category.
You're literally only word of mouth. Like you have to have word of mouth to be able to play that game right now.
But well, I mean, it's listen, it's what they say about Bruno Caboclo, like 2 years away from being 2 years away. That's how I feel about that.
That's just Valve. 2 years away from being 2 years away.
So for my last pick, I thought about being weird and taking a WoW guild and just doing, you got Race to World First events and Arena. I don't even know if that's really big anymore.
Can I take summer games done quick?
I thought about maybe. You just get speed running.
Just speed running in general.
I thought about Rocket League just because it's really, I mean, it's the perfect spectator esport. Like anyone watching it gets it. Lots of sponsors, lots of tournaments, lots of majors. But I just can't really say no to a game of this size and its player base. I'm gonna take Call of Duty. I'm gonna take because I think there's
you're betting on you're betting on Black Ops 6.
I'm betting on Black Ops Resurgence. I've also got COD Mobile. I've also got Warzone competitions.
True.
I've got. It seems like they're loosening like the franchise stuff with CDL, so they're letting more challengers teams compete. You don't have to like be stuck with like a regional location based thing. I think there's I just think there's a lot to go there. So I'm taking Call of Duty there. And so if you at home want to decide, I'll quickly run through it. I went with Counter-Strike 2, the GOAT. It's little brother Valorant. Don't tell any CS players I said that.
Clip it, chip it.
Rising Star and Deadlock, and the savvy established veteran that is Call of Duty, and that is my roster. Okay.
Yeah, I went with League of Legends, much to my dismay. The fighting game community, Dota
as a whole, which is a great value.
Yeah, well, like you said, Call of Duty, and you got 3 games. I've got like if you go look at the Combo Breaker lineup. I got a mystery game tournament. I could be playing Sailor Moon for the NES at my majors, and then I got Mobile Legends Bang Bang. So I went heavy on MOBA. And then I got fighting games, and you went entirely shooter, basically.
Almost every shooter. Shooter.
You went, well, to be fair, like
variety.
When you get into esports, it's like, okay, outside of like fighting games, it's really, do you shoot or do you not shoot?
Shoot, yeah, and that's why I thought about Rocket League as like
that's like one of the only other examples, like the sports
it's not a
games.
MOBA, a shooter, or a fighter.
Yeah, because some of the lists I was looking at were like, hey, EA Sports FC, and I'm like, get out of here, no.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of like big pro clubs that get attached to that. So I thought about that too. But I do have to run. I apologize for having to leave early. I also have to use the bathroom. A lot of things got to happen in the next few minutes.
Nope, you're good. You're good.
So fans, let us know who you think won. It's probably Cale. And thanks for having me.
Yep. Everybody, thanks for listening. We'll be back at some point to talk the rest of our esports lineup. We've got, Lord knows, way too much stuff to talk about on that front. And I guarantee by the time we get together to talk next, there'll be another million stories to talk about on the gaming side of things. Or maybe we'll actually do what the initial pitch of this podcast would be and bring a guest on to do interviews.
We'll get there.
We'll get there eventually. Maybe we're 2 months away from being 2 months away. We're the Bruno Caboclo of podcasting.
Podcasts.
Yeah. That's going to be our tagline. That should be our tagline.
Bruno Caboclo.
We're the Bruno Caboclo of gaming and esports podcasts.
We're 2 episodes away from 2 episodes away from our best episode.
Exactly.
Excellent.
But,
All right.
Later, everybody.
Bye.